Jake Morrison sat at the long metal table and watched the blue aliens across from him. The Zilani looked like humans, but their skin was the color of deep ocean water, and their eyes were completely black. They wore fancy robes covered in gold, threads that caught the light from the ship's windows. The meeting room on the human ship felt cold. Jake could hear the soft hum of the engines and the quiet beeping of computers. His aide, Kate Sullivan, sat next to him, taking notes on her tablet. She kept glancing at Jake's face, watching for the small signs that meant trouble was coming. High Merchant Vexthul was the leader of the Zilani group. He had been talking for 2 hours about trade routes and shipping rights. His voice was high and sharp like metal scraping against stone. Every few minutes he would make a sound that was like laughing, but it sounded more like a snake hissing. "Your people are weak," Vexthul said, leaning forward. His black eyes reflected the lights like mirrors. "You humans talk and talk, but you never do anything. You make committees for everything. You have meetings about having meetings." Jake kept his face calm, but Kate saw his jaw muscles tighten. She had worked with Jake for 3 years. She knew that look. It was the same look Jake got right before he did something that made other species very sorry they had bothered humanity. "High Merchant," Jake said in a quiet voice. "We prefer to solve problems with words instead of weapons. This does not make us weak." The other Zilani at the table made their hissing laugh sounds. One of them, a female with silver decorations on her blue skin, spoke up. "You gave up your best star systems to avoid fighting the Kreethik. You let the Dorhai take 3 of your colonies without fighting back. You are not warriors. You are farmers who play at being space travelers." Kate watched Jake's hands. His fingers were very still on the table. Too still. When Jake got really angry, he stopped moving completely. It was like he was using all his energy to keep himself under control. "We value peace," Jake said. Each word came out slow and careful. "We believe that fighting should be the last choice, not the first choice." Vexthul stood up from his chair. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, and his robes made him look even bigger. "Last choice? You mean no choice. Your species has no stomach for real conflict. You hide behind your treaties and your diplomatic rules because you are afraid to fight." The room got very quiet. Kate could hear her own heartbeat. She looked at Jake and saw something that made her nervous. Jake was smiling. It was a small smile, the kind humans made when they heard something funny. But Kate knew Jake well enough to know this smile meant something different. "High Merchant Vexthul," Jake said, standing up slowly. He was shorter than the alien, but somehow he seemed to fill more space in the room. "I want to make something very clear to you and your people." Jake walked around the table until he was standing close to the Zilani leader. The aliens all watched him, but they did not look worried. They still thought humans were weak. "We have been having these talks for 6 months, Jake continued. 6 months of asking you nicely to respect our shipping lanes. 6 months of requesting that you stop taking cargo from our merchant ships. 6 months of trying to find a peaceful solution to this problem." Vexthul made his hissing laugh. "Yes, 6 months of you begging us to be nice to you. 6 months of proving that humans are not worth respecting." Jake nodded slowly. "I see. You think our patience means we are weak. You think our desire for peace means we cannot fight. You think our politeness means we are afraid of you." "Yes," Vexthul said. "That is exactly what we think." Jake was quiet for a long moment. He looked at each of the Zilani in turn. When he spoke again, his voice was so quiet that everyone had to lean forward to hear him. "High Merchant, I am going to give you some advice. This advice could save your entire species from a very bad mistake. Please listen carefully." The Zilani all looked at each other. Some of them made quiet hissing sounds. "Please," Jake said, "do not make us angry." The room exploded with Zilani laughter. The sound was like a dozen snakes all hissing at once. Vexthul laughed so hard that he had to hold onto the table. The female Zilani laughed until she started coughing. "Make you angry?" Vexthul gasped between laughs. "What will you do? Write us a strongly worded letter? Form a committee to study the problem?" Send us more diplomats to beg for mercy? Jake did not laugh. He did not smile. He just watched the aliens laugh at him with the same calm expression he had worn all day. We will continue taking your cargo ships, Vexthal said, when he finally stopped laughing. We will use your shipping lanes whenever we want. And if you do not like it, you can send us more diplomats to cry about it. The Zilani began gathering their things. They were still making their hissing laugh sounds as they prepared to leave. Jake walked back to his chair and sat down. Kate was staring at him with wide eyes. She had never seen him so calm after being insulted so badly. Jake, she whispered, are you okay? Jake picked up his tablet and began typing notes about the meeting. I am fine, Kate. Please send a message to Earth. Tell them the Zilani have rejected our final offer. Final offer? Kate asked. But you never mentioned any final offer. Jake looked up at her. His eyes were very calm, but Kate saw something in them that made her shiver. The offer was simple, Jake said. We offered them the chance to not make us angry. They chose to reject that offer. The Zilani were almost at the door when Jake spoke. Again. His voice was still quiet, but it carried clearly across the room. High Merchant Vexthal. The alien leader turned around. He was still smiling. You will remember this conversation, Jake said. When the time comes, you will remember that we tried to warn you. We asked you nicely. We gave you every chance to avoid what comes next. Vexthal made his hissing laugh one more time. Is that a threat, human? Jake shook his head. No, High Merchant, it is not a threat, it is a promise. We asked you please not to make us angry. You have chosen to ignore that request. Now you will learn why we asked. The Zilani left the room, still laughing. Kate could hear them in the hallway making jokes about weak humans and their empty words. When they were gone, Kate turned to Jake. What happens now? Jake was typing on his tablet again. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. Now, he said without looking up. They find out what angry humans look like. And Kate? Yes? Jake finally looked at her. The calm expression was gone. In its place was something Kate had never seen before. Something that made her understand why Jake had tried so hard to warn the Zilani. Make sure you are nowhere near Zilani space for the next few weeks. 3 months passed after the meeting with the Zilani. Jake Morrison had returned to Earth and filed his reports. The government read his warnings about the blue aliens, but many people thought the Zilani would not really attack human colonies. They were wrong. The attack came at dawn on New Austin, a small farming colony on the edge of human space. The planet had about 50,000 people living in 3 main cities. Most of them were farmers who grew food to send back to Earth, or miners who dug rare metals from the mountains. Lisa Morgan was drinking her morning coffee when the alarms started screaming. She was the colony administrator, which meant she was in charge of keeping everyone safe and making sure the colony ran smoothly. She had been doing the job for 5 years and had never heard the attack alarms before. What is happening? She asked her assistant, a young man named Danny who worked in the communications center. Ships, ma'am, Danny said. His face was white with fear. Big ships coming down from orbit. They have weapons. Lisa ran to the control room and looked at the screens. She could see 12 large ships landing around the main city. They were Zilani ships, but they were not the merchant vessels she had seen in the trade reports. These ships had guns and armor. They were warships. The Zilani soldiers came out of their ships shooting. They wore black armor and carried energy weapons that could cut through metal. The human defense force tried to fight back, but they only had 20 soldiers and basic weapons. The Zilani had hundreds of soldiers with much better equipment. Captain Bill Mason was in charge of the defense force. He was a good man who had served in the human military for 15 years before coming to New Austin. He called Lisa on the radio while the battle was happening. Lisa, we cannot hold them, he said. His voice was calm, but Lisa could hear explosions in the background. They have too many soldiers and too many weapons. We need to surrender before they kill everyone. Lisa looked at the screen showing the battle. The Zilani were already in the city streets. Human civilians were running and hiding. Some of the aliens were setting buildings on fire just for fun. "Do it, Bill," she said. "Tell them we surrender." But even after the humans stopped fighting, the Zilani kept shooting. They destroyed the power station and the water treatment plant. They broke into houses and took anything valuable. They forced the humans to come out of their homes and gather in the city center. War merchant Caxthy was the leader of the Zilani attack force. He was bigger than the other Zilani, with scars on his blue skin and gold teeth. He stood in front of the gathered humans and made a speech. "You humans are now property of the Zilani Trade Consortium," he announced. His voice was loud and harsh. "You will work for us. You will do what we tell you to do. If you refuse, we will hurt you. If you try to escape, we will kill you." Lisa stood in the crowd with the other colonists. She could see the fear in their faces. Children were crying. Old people were shaking. The Zilani soldiers were laughing and pointing their weapons at anyone who looked like they might cause trouble. Cax walked over to Lisa. Someone had told him she was the colony leader. "You're in charge of these humans?" he asked. Lisa nodded. "I am the colony administrator." "Good. Then you will help us organize the work groups. Your people will mine metals for us. They will grow food for us. They will build things for us. In return, we will let them live." Lisa looked around at her people. She saw Bill Mason standing with his hands tied behind his back. She saw Danny from the communications center trying to comfort a crying child. She saw hundreds of people who had trusted her to keep them safe. "We will cooperate," Lisa said quietly. "We do not want any more violence." Cax made the hissing laugh that all Zilani made when they thought something was funny. "Smart human. You understand that resistance is useless." The Zilani set up work camps around the city. They made the humans work 16 hours a day in the mines and the farms. They gave them very little food and no medical care. Anyone who complained was beaten. Anyone who tried to help others was punished. The Zilani also sent messages to their friends in space. They told other alien species that attacking humans was easy and profitable. They showed videos of human colonists working as slaves. They bragged about how the humans had surrendered without really fighting. News of the attack spread across the galaxy. Many alien species watched the videos and began to think that humans were as weak as the Zilani claimed. The Krithak, who were giant insect-like aliens, started moving their war fleets closer to human space. The Dorhai, who were made of living crystal, began planning their own attacks on human colonies. On Earth, President Amy Rodriguez called an emergency meeting of the government. She sat in a room with her advisors and military commanders. Everyone looked serious and angry. "The Zilani have made their choice," she said. "They attacked our people. They enslaved our colonists. They are spreading propaganda to encourage other species to attack us." General Chris Baker was in charge of the human military. He was an old man with gray hair and many scars from past battles. He had been waiting for this moment for years. "Ma'am, we can have response teams ready to move in 6 hours," he said. "We can free New Austin and destroy the Zilani fleet." Amy shook her head. "No, General, that would just start a war with one species. We need to send a message to the entire galaxy. We need to show them all what happens when they attack humanity." "What are you suggesting?" asked Dr. Ben Carter, who was the president's science advisor. Amy looked around the room at her advisors. "We are going to let the Zilani think they have won. We are going to let other species move their fleets into position. We are going to let them all commit to attacking us." "That seems very dangerous," said Secretary of Defense Mary Johnson. "What if they coordinate a full attack?" Amy smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Then we will show the galaxy why humans have survived every challenge we have ever faced. We will show them why we kept asking them not to make us angry." General Baker nodded slowly. "The Omega protocols?" "All of them," Amy confirmed. "Full deployment. No holding back." Meanwhile, on New Austin, Lisa Morgan was working in the communication center under Zilani guard. She appeared to be helping organize work schedules, but she was actually doing something else. She was sending coded messages to other human colonies, warning them to prepare for what was coming. The Zilani thought they had broken the human spirit. They thought the colonists were defeated and helpless. They were wrong. Late at night, when the Zilani guards were not watching closely, Lisa met with Bill Mason and a few other colonists in an abandoned building. They spoke in whispers. "How much longer?" Bill asked. Lisa checked her hidden communication device. "The response teams are already in position. They have been watching us for weeks. The Zilani just do not know it yet." "What about the other aliens, the Krithak and the Dorhai?" "They are moving their fleets just like we hoped they would. Soon every species that wants to attack humanity will be in the same place at the same time." Bill smiled for the first time in months. "Then they will all learn the same lesson?" Lisa nodded. "Yes. They will learn why we asked them not to make us angry. And they will learn it all at once." Above them, in the dark sky, human ships waited, in complete silence. The Zilani had no idea they were there. Soon the galaxy would discover that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons. It was their patience, and their ability to plan for the moment when patience was no longer enough. 2 weeks after the attack on New Austin, something strange happened. The galaxy expected humans to either fight back or stay quiet. Instead, they did something nobody understood. They started visiting every alien species in the galaxy with the same message. Jake Morrison was back on his diplomatic ship, but now he traveled with a much larger fleet. 12 human ships followed him wherever he went. The aliens noticed that these ships looked different from the usual human vessels. They were bigger, darker, and had strange designs that hurt to look at for too long. Jake's first stop was the Ethereal Conclave, a group of very old aliens who claimed to be the wisest species in the galaxy. They lived on a space station that floated near a dying star. Their leader was called the Prime Consciousness, and it looked like a ball of glowing gas that could speak. "Human Morrison," the Prime Consciousness said, in a voice like wind through metal. "We have heard about your colony. We offer our sympathy for your loss." Jake sat in the strange floating chair the Ethereals had provided. Around him, dozens of the gas ball aliens floated in a circle. The room was filled with soft music that seemed to come from nowhere. "Thank you," Jake said. "But I am not here for sympathy. I am here to give you information." "What kind of information?" "The Zilani have declared war on humanity. Other species are preparing to join them. The Krithak are moving their fleets. The Dorhai are building new warships. Several smaller species are talking about attacking human colonies." The Prime Consciousness pulsed with different colors. "This is unfortunate. War brings suffering to all species." Jake nodded. "Yes, it does. That is why I am here to warn you. Distance yourselves from the Zilani and their allies. Do not provide them with supplies or support. Do not allow them to use your space." "And if we refuse?" Jake's face stayed calm, but his voice became very quiet. "Please do not make us angry." The ethereals began to glow brighter. They made sounds like singing, but Jake could tell they were arguing with each other. Finally, the Prime Consciousness spoke again. "Human Morrison, your species has always been peaceful. You solve problems with words, not weapons. Why should we fear your anger?" Jake stood up from his floating chair. "Because you have never seen us truly angry. Please remember this conversation. When the time comes, remember that we tried to warn you." The ethereals watched Jake leave their station. Most of them thought his warning was meaningless, but a few of the older ones remembered stories from long ago. Stories about a species that was dangerous precisely because it chose not to be. Jake's next stop was the Krithak home system. The Krithak were giant insects that thought only about war and conquest. Their ships looked like metal bugs with huge weapons. Their leader was called the War Queen, and she was the size of a human building. The War Queen laughed when Jake gave her the same warning. Her laugh sounded like 1,000 metal blades scraping against stone. "Humans threaten us?" she buzzed. "You weak mammals who surrender without fighting? Your colony fell in one day. Your people work as slaves for the Zilani. What can you possibly do to us?" Jake looked up at the massive insect. Around him, thousands of smaller Krithak soldiers clicked their claws and made threatening sounds. "War Queen, I ask you one more time. Please do not make us angry." The War Queen's laugh grew louder. "Make you angry? Good. Be angry. Your anger means nothing to us. We will take your colonies one by one. We will make your entire species our slaves." Jake turned to leave, but he paused at the door. "War Queen, in 1 week you will understand why we asked you not to make us angry. I hope some of your species survives to remember the lesson." The Krithak made their scraping laugh sounds as Jake left. They began making plans to attack human space the next day. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Ben Carter was working with a team of scientists in a secret laboratory. They were not building weapons or ships. They were studying something much more important: the psychology of other alien species. The Krithak think only about direct combat, Ben explained to his team. They cannot understand strategy or deception. The Zilani think they are smarter than everyone else, so they do not prepare for surprises. The Dorhai are very old and move slowly, so they do not react quickly to changes. Dr. Lucy Hayes, Ben's partner, was looking at brain scans of different alien species. What about their fear responses? How do they react when they realize they are in danger? That is the interesting part, Ben said. Most species have simple fear responses. They either fight or run away. Humans are different. We can be afraid and still think clearly. We can be terrified and still make complex plans. That gives us a huge advantage. But what about their pack behavior? Asked Dr. Tony Wright, who studied animal behavior. Lucy pulled up more data on her computer. Most alien species fight as individuals, even when they are in groups. Humans fight as a single organism. When one human is threatened, all humans feel threatened. When one human is hurt, all humans want revenge. Ben nodded. And that is why the aliens do not understand our warnings. They think "do not make us angry" means "do not make me angry." They do not realize it means "do not make my entire species angry." Back on New Austin, the Zilani were starting to notice strange things. Human workers were moving with unusual coordination. Equipment kept breaking down in ways that seemed impossible. Zilani guards were disappearing from their posts. War Merchant Caxtha called a meeting with his officers. They gathered in the human government building that the Zilani had taken over. "Something is wrong with these humans," he said. "They are too organized for slaves. They work together too well." "Maybe they are planning an escape," suggested one of his officers. "Impossible," Caxtha replied. "We have all the weapons. We control all the transportation. They have no way to leave the planet." But the Zilani were wrong. The humans were not planning to escape. They were planning something much more complicated. Lisa Morgan appeared to be broken by months of captivity. She moved slowly and kept her head down when Zilani guards were around. But at night she was very busy. She met with small groups of colonists and gave them instructions. "The signal will come in 3 days," she whispered to a group of miners. "When you see it, you will know what to do." "What kind of signal?" asked one of the miners. Lisa smiled. "You will know it when you see it. Trust me." The miners looked confused, but they trusted Lisa. She had been their leader for years, and she had never let them down. High above New Austin, hidden in the darkness of space, Captain Paul Martinez watched the planet through his ship's sensors. His vessel was completely invisible to Zilani technology. It had been watching the colony for months, recording everything the Zilani did. "Captain," said his communications officer, "we are receiving the final authorization codes from Earth." Paul nodded. "Understood. Signal all ships. Operation Awakening begins in 72 hours. Sir, what about the civilians? What if some of them get hurt during the operation?" Paul looked at the planet below. He could see the lights of the human cities where his people were being held as slaves. "Lieutenant, there are no civilians down there. There are only human citizens, who have been waiting very patiently for us to come and get them. And now we are going to show the galaxy what happens when you make humans wait too long." Around Paul's ship, dozens of other human vessels materialized out of nothing. They had been there all along, watching and waiting. The Zilani had no idea that the largest human military force in history was sitting right above their heads. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had been polite not because they were weak, but because they were dangerous. And their patience had just run out. The signal came at exactly noon on New Austin. Every human on the planet saw it at the same time. The sky turned bright white for 3 seconds, then returned to normal. To the Zilani guards, it looked like a strange flash of lightning. To the humans, it meant everything was about to change. Lisa Morgan was working in the communications center when the flash happened. The Zilani guard next to her was looking out the window and did not notice when Lisa's fingers moved quickly across the control panel. 3 quick button presses, and suddenly every human on the planet knew that help had arrived. War Merchant Caxthy was in his command center when his officers started shouting. The screens that showed space around the planet were filled with new contacts. Ships were appearing everywhere as if they had materialized out of nothing. Where did they come from? Caxthy screamed at his sensor operator. I do not know, sir. They were not there a moment ago. Now there are over 200 human ships surrounding the planet. Caxthy stared at the screens. The human ships were unlike anything he had ever seen. They were huge, dark, and covered with weapons that looked like they could destroy entire cities. How had the humans hidden so many warships? Captain Paul Martinez stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked down at New Austin. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew what they had to do. Open a channel to all Zilani forces, Paul ordered. The face of War Merchant Caxthy appeared on the main screen. The blue alien looked terrified. This is Captain Martinez of the human fleet, Paul said in a calm voice. You have exactly 10 minutes to release all human prisoners and return to your ships. If you comply, you will be allowed to leave this system alive. Caxthy tried to look brave, but his voice was shaking. You cannot threaten us. We have your people as hostages. If you attack, we will kill them all. Paul smiled. It was not a nice smile. War Merchant, you seem to be confused about something. You do not have hostages. You have human citizens who have been waiting patiently for us to come and get them. And we have been waiting patiently for you to give us a reason to show you what angry humans look like. On the planet's surface, the human colonists were no longer acting like broken slaves. In the mining camps, workers suddenly produced hidden weapons from places the Zilani had never thought to search. In the cities, groups of humans moved with military precision to surround Zilani positions. Bill Mason, who had been pretending to be a defeated soldier, was actually Colonel Bill Mason of the Human Special Forces. He had been organizing the resistance from the very beginning. When Lisa's signal came, he and his hidden soldiers struck at every Zilani position at once. The Zilani guards found themselves surrounded by humans who moved like trained soldiers. The colonists they thought were helpless farmers were actually military personnel who had been gathering intelligence for months. Lisa Morgan walked into the communications center where she had been forced to work as a slave. The Zilani guard turned to point his weapon at her but stopped when he saw her face. She was no longer the broken administrator who begged for mercy. She was someone completely different. My name is Colonel Lisa Morgan, she said to the terrified guard. I am the commanding officer of the 7th Human Expeditionary Force. You and your friends have been living on a human military base for the past 3 months. You just did not know it. The guard's weapon fell from his shaking hands. In space, the Krithak fleet arrived exactly when the humans expected them to. The giant insects had brought their entire war fleet to destroy what they thought was a weak human colony. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by human warships that dwarfed their largest vessels. Admiral Rick Thompson commanded the human battle fleet from his flagship, the Retribution. He had been waiting his entire career for this moment. The Yao, Krithak had been threatening human space for decades, always pulling back when humans offered to negotiate. Now they had finally committed to a real fight. Krithak War Queen, Admiral Thompson broadcasted. This is your only warning. Leave this system immediately, or share the fate of your Zilani allies. The War Queen's response came back full of anger and threats. We do not fear you, humans. We will crush your ships and enslave your people. Wrong answer, Thompson said quietly. What happened next lasted exactly 47 minutes. The humans called it the Battle of New Austin, but it was not really a battle. It was a demonstration. The human ships used weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Energy beams that could slice through the strongest armor like it was paper. missiles that seemed to think for themselves and could not be stopped by any defense. Most terrifying of all, weapons that made enemy ships simply disappear, as if they had never existed at all. Captain Megan Clark commanded a squadron of human destroyers. Her ships were smaller than the Krethak battleships, but her weapons were far more advanced. She watched as her squadron eliminated an entire Krethak battle group in less than 10 minutes. "Target the next group," she ordered her weapons officer. "Make sure you record everything. The rest of the galaxy needs to see this." The Krethak fought bravely, but it did not matter. Their weapons could not penetrate human shields. Their fastest ships could not escape human missiles. Their strongest armor melted under human energy weapons. The War Queen's flagship was the last Krethak ship to fall. As it broke apart, she sent one final message to the human fleet. "How?" she asked. "How did you become so powerful?" Admiral Thompson answered her personally. "We were always this powerful, War Queen. We just preferred not to use it. You should have listened when we asked you not to make us angry." On New Austin, the last Zilani forces surrendered without firing another shot. War Merchant Caxley was brought before Colonel Lisa Morgan in chains. "You lied to us," he said. "You pretended to be weak. You pretended to surrender." Lisa nodded. "Yes, we did. We wanted to see how far you would go. We wanted to see which species would join you in attacking humanity. Now we know." "What will you do with us?" Lisa looked at the defeated alien. "That depends on you. You can return to your people and tell them what you have seen here. You can warn them that humanity is not as weak as they thought. Or you can refuse to deliver that message, and we will deliver it ourselves." Caxley understood the threat. "We will tell them. We will tell everyone." "Good," Lisa said. "Make sure you tell them exactly what happened here. Make sure they understand that we gave you every chance to avoid this. We asked you nicely. We warned you repeatedly. We begged you not to make us angry." She paused and looked directly into his black eyes. "Make sure they understand that this was us being merciful. If you attack human civilians again, if you enslave our people again, if you make us truly angry, what you saw today will seem like a gentle warning." As the Zilani survivors were loaded onto their ships, they could see human vessels everywhere, hundreds of warships that had appeared from nowhere. Advanced technology that made their own weapons look like children's toys. An entire military force that had been hidden so well that nobody in the galaxy had suspected it existed. The universe was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, or their ships, or their weapons. It was their patience, and their willingness to let others make the first mistake. But that patience had limits, and those limits had just been reached. 6 weeks after the Battle of New Austin, the galaxy was a very different place. The Zilani Trade Consortium no longer existed. Their home worlds were empty, their people scattered across the galaxy as refugees. The Krethak hive mind had lost 90% of their fleet and were trapped in their home system. 3 other alien species that had tried to attack human colonies after hearing about New Austin had been dealt with just as quickly and completely. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, but everything had changed. The room was the same, with its curved walls and floating platforms for different species. But the aliens who looked at him now had fear in their eyes instead of contempt. "For 300 years, Jake said in a calm voice, humanity has been part of this galactic community. We have followed your rules. We have accepted smaller territories when you demanded it. We have given up resources when you asked. We have allowed you to test our resolve again and again because we believed in peace." The assembled representatives listened in complete silence. The ethereal conclave glowed with nervous colors. The crystalline Dorhai made no sound at all. Even the proud Vorthon Empire, who had never shown respect to any other species, kept their heads down. "We told you repeatedly not to make us angry," Jake continued. "We said please, we asked nicely. We gave you every opportunity to understand that our patience had limits. You chose to ignore those warnings." High Counselor Zethmar of the Vorthon Empire finally spoke. His voice was much quieter than it had been in previous meetings. Ambassador Morrison, we had no idea that humanity possessed such military capabilities. Your species always appeared to prefer diplomatic solutions. Jake nodded. We do prefer diplomatic solutions. That has not changed. But you mistook our preference for peace as an inability to fight. You confused our politeness with weakness. You thought our willingness to compromise meant we would accept any abuse. Dr. Ben Carter sat in the human observation section, watching the proceedings. His research on alien psychology had proven correct in every detail. The species that had attacked humanity were the ones who could not understand that restraint came from strength, not weakness. The question now, Jake said, is what happens next. He walked to the center of the chamber and activated a holographic display. It showed a map of the entire galaxy, with different colors marking the territories of various species. These are your current borders, Jake said. These are the trade routes you control. These are the resources you have claimed. For centuries you have divided these things among yourselves while giving humanity the smallest and least valuable portions. The hologram changed, showing new boundary lines. These are your new borders. These are the trade routes that will now be managed by human oversight. These are the resources that will be fairly distributed among all species, including humanity. Counselor, Vexandra of the Spiral Alliance made a sound of protest. You cannot simply redraw the galactic map by force. That would make you conquerors, no different from the species you just destroyed. Jake turned to look at her. Counselor, we are not conquerors. We have no interest in ruling other species or taking their homeworlds, but we will no longer accept an unfair distribution of galactic resources. We will no longer allow aggressive species to threaten peaceful ones, and we will no longer tolerate attacks on human citizens. He paused and looked around the chamber. This is not a negotiation. This is an explanation of the new reality. You can work with us to create a more peaceful and fair galaxy, or you can resist and face the same fate as the Zilani and Krethak. The chamber erupted in quiet discussions as the alien representatives talked among themselves. Finally, the prime consciousness of the ethereal conclave spoke. What guarantee do we have that humanity will not abuse this new power? What stops you from becoming the very thing you claim to oppose? Jake smiled. It was a genuine smile this time, not the cold expression he had worn during the recent conflicts. The same thing that stopped us for the past 300 years, he said. Our nature. We could have conquered the galaxy at any time during the past 3 centuries. We had the technology and the military capability. But we chose not to because conquest is not who we are. Dr. Lucy Hayes stood up in the human section. She had been given permission to address the council about her research. If I may, she said, I would like to explain something about human psychology that might help. You understand. The council gave her permission to speak. Humans are unique among galactic species in one important way, Lucy explained. We developed the ability to be extremely violent, while also developing strong moral codes to control that violence. Most species are either naturally peaceful or naturally aggressive. Humans are naturally both. She activated her own holographic display, showing brain scans and psychological profiles. When humans say, "Please do not make us angry," we are not making a threat. We are asking for help controlling our own nature. We prefer peace because we know what we are capable of when we choose violence. We ask you not to force us to make that choice. The alien representative stared at the brain scans showing human neural activity during different emotional states. The difference between peaceful humans and angry humans is not capability. It is choice. You forced us to make a choice we did not want to make. Back on New Austin, the colony was rebuilding quickly. The human colonists had revealed their true identities as military personnel, but many of them decided to stay and make the planet their real home. Colonel Lisa Morgan, now wearing her proper uniform, stood in the rebuilt government building. Through the windows, she could see construction crews working to repair the damage from the Zilani occupation. But they were not just fixing what was broken, they were building something better. The memorial is almost finished, reported Major Danny Chen, who had been her communications assistant during the deception. Lisa nodded. Good. Make sure the inscription is in every galactic language. I want every species to be able to read it. The memorial was being built in the center of New Austin's main city. It would honor the Zalani and Krethak soldiers who had died during the conflict. The inscription would read, "They were warned. They chose not to listen. Please do not make us angry." Captain Paul Martinez was preparing to leave New Austin orbit with his fleet. His ships would return to their hidden bases throughout the galaxy, ready to respond if any other species decided to test humanity's resolve. "Captain," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a priority message from Earth. Put it through." President Amy Rodriguez appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but satisfied. "Paul, I want to thank you and your crews for a job well done. The galaxy now understands that humanity is not to be trifled with. What are our orders?" "Now, ma'am, the same orders you have always had," Amy replied. "Protect human citizens, maintain the peace, and remember that our strength comes from our restraint, not from our weapons." Paul nodded. "Understood, ma'am. What about first contact with new species?" Amy thought for a moment. "The same approach we have always used. Be polite, be diplomatic, be fair. And if they ask why we are so concerned about avoiding conflict, tell them the truth. Which is? Tell them that we have seen what happens when humans get truly angry. Tell them that everything they just witnessed was us being merciful. Tell them that we really, really prefer to solve problems peacefully." The transmission ended, and Paul looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other alien species were receiving reports about what had happened at New Austin. Some would learn the lesson and choose to treat humanity with respect. Others would not. But that was their choice to make. On a distant world, a new alien species was just discovering space travel. Their first radio signals were being received by the galactic community. Soon they would be invited to join the council and take their place among the stars. When that happened, they would be given the same advice that all new species received. Treat others with respect, follow the laws of galactic civilization, and whatever you do not make the humans angry. Because the universe had finally learned why humans kept saying please.